What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today, we're going over round 2 of our Dynasty rookie mock draft. Remember, it is super flex, scoring full PPR like most Dynasty leagues are. So, if you don't remember from the previous video, real quick, up here is just the strength of every single team. Green means they're good at it. Red means they're bad at it. Pretty self-explanatory. 12th place team here, or I guess Team 12. Finished in first place last season. Team 1 last place. You can kind of get a feel for that, given that, teams at the end are kind of better at more things. Got a question in the last video about, well, basically I had said, these are not my rankings necessarily. They're very, very close to them, at least as of right now, and they even changed. So when I did the whole mock draft out, round 2 is different from what it was going to be in video 1, just because I keep doing research on these players. Another change I made, Traylon Burks, now my wide receiver 1. So these things are fluid. And so basically the question was, well, if these aren't your rankings, number one, like how can I use the rankings if you're not drafting based off of them, right? First thing, you can just draft based off them. If you literally want to just like take the rankings, cross players off as they get taken, put no analysis into it, and just take the top available, you can do that. But basically, my answer is what we're doing in this video. This is the entire point of this video, is to show you more goes into drafting than just the rankings. If you have a team like Team 3 is a bad example. They're bad at pretty much everything. But if you're Team 4 here, and the top available player is a running back, right? You're solid at running back, right? You can't just look at this and say, well, Nick has 3 running backs here, I have to take a running back. No, you need receiver. This is the worst team in the league, 12th best starter, 11th best on their bench at wide receiver. You need a wide receiver. You've got to lean towards that position. So it's just doing what I'm doing on the screen here. I will try to pay more attention to that as we go through this draft. But yeah, it's using the rankings, but sometimes just going to position and saying, hey, I need a wide receiver. I don't care if I'm reaching a few spots. I need a wide receiver. We're going to try to do that a little bit more today. But yeah, let's go over round 2. And again, you want to see the rankings, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. Have them for all different formats you might need. Superflex, non-superflex, tight end premium, both superflex and tight end premium. And then if you want rookie, there's a little checkbox. You have the overall rankings for Dynasty Start. That was the other question. The other part of the question was, what about if I'm in a Dynasty Startup? It's preloaded on Dynasty Startup. Click rookie, and then you're at rookie only. So go back to Team 1. Team 1, pretty decent at quarterback, really good at tight end, awful at running back and wide receiver. They took Breece Hall at number 1. Who did they take in the second round? We're going to go with George Pickens. Oh, yeah, and I'm going to didn't want to, spoil the surprise. So we're going to pull up little notes here so you guys can kind of follow along. If you missed something, you can kind of see just my general thoughts. On the website, there's like a full paragraph write-up. These are just kind of like bullet points, but I need to do a good job of just kind of showing my general thoughts on each of the players. So, Pickens. I consider Pickens a high upside play. That's not to say I think it's like, boom or bust. This dude's either like a wide receiver 1 in fantasy or he's not playing. I just think he possesses a lot of upside, right? And typically, you guys know my draft strategies, my draft style, I guess. I am a risky player. I prefer, if there are 2 players in front of me, one of them has a ton of upside, even if he comes with a little bit more risk, which, again, I don't necessarily think Pickens is risky, but let's be honest, if someone had a ton of upside and no risk, well, they'd be going first overall, right? So this is not Jamar Chase, right? We knew he had a ton of upside, no risk. No, none of the wide receivers this season are Jamar Chase. So everyone has some level of risk. But I typically lean upside. Now, what is the upside here? 96 percentile breakout age. He's got above average speed, agility. Frame is like good, 6'3", 195. That's pretty solid. It means he's a little bit wiry, right? Like obviously, I'm tiny compared to all of these players. Like compared to NFL caliber starting wide receivers, 6'3", 195 means you're a little on the thinner side, right? So not great in run blocking, not great against the press. I always bring that up because it's like it depends on what offense you're going to be drafted to, right? You go to like Seattle and they're going to be like, hey, you need to block, right? But also you got to think like no team is using an early pick looking at a player being like, oh, they can't block. Well, we're going to need them to block. We're going to take them anyways, right? So in general, these are things that the team that's taking them knows, and they're not going to spend a really early pick on someone. I'm not going to say he can't block, but like that's not his strong suit. They're not going to throw him out and be like, well, you've got to be great at it, right? So just want to point that out. But yeah, he's not going to be great at blocking. Could get pressed at the line, although he's quick. He can get open. Going to be a really good deep threat. Really good route runner. I like his ability to adjust. So this is one thing. Landing spot's key for all these guys. But I'll say this with Pickens. If he goes to a team with an off-target quarterback, not a great quarterback, he's really good at just like making the catch, right? If the target isn't like right on target, the ball's not right there, he can extend, he can make athletic catches, and so I'm not as worried if he goes to a bad landing spot. But always we prefer who's going to the Packers, who's going to Kansas City, right? We still want that to happen, obviously. It's just that with Pickens, I'm like less concerned if he goes to a terrible team. It's still bad. You'll still probably drop in the rankings if he goes to an awful offense. But just want to mention that I'm not overly concerned. But of course, landing spot always key. You want to say that with everyone. Team 2. Fine at quarterback. Awful running backs. Great wide receivers. Mediocre tight ends. We took Malik Willis in round 1. Well, we're not going to draft a second quarterback here. Makes a lot of sense that we would go with running back because they are arguably the worst team in the league at running back. And so Rachaad White. Bring Rachaad White up here. White is an interesting prospect. I don't know why that changed. Let's make it like this. Interesting prospect. I'll say high upside because of the format, of course. PPR scoring with the vast majority of Dynasty leagues. And he's exceptional in the receiving game. 98th percentile college target share. Really good pass protection. So, like, I don't really care what team he goes to. He's going to be the third down back. So, if you, this is another thing. In Dynasty, you see that you've got a starting running back and they draft Rachaad White. You just got to decrease the target projection on whatever running back you had because White's going to be the third down back. I've seen him compared to Alvin Kamara. Obviously, that's being overly optimistic, right? Like, anytime you're like, oh, this is the next Derrick Henry, this is the next Alvin Kamara, like, you're going to be wrong 99% of the time. But if you wanted, like, a ceiling case, what could he be? I guess it's that. Already 23 years old, that is never ideal. It's not to say that you're, like, too old, oh, you're already starting to decline. But, like, same age as Jonathan Taylor, half a year older than Cam Akers, 2.5, this is a big one, 2.5 years older than Isaiah Spiller and Breece Hall. So when you're comparing rookies, just understand that, right? Like in 2.5 years, Breece Hall will be the same age as Rachaad White is right now. It's just something to think about. I always look at that with like college production. When guys are older and they're producing, it's like, okay, but like these other guys that are producing the same numbers as you, like, what would they have done in 2.5 years, right? Like, what if you took Jonathan Taylor and you put him in college last year? What numbers is he posting, right? So it's maybe unfair to compare Jonathan Taylor, but, like, you get the idea, right? Older prospects, I don't love it as much. But, again, he's so good in the passing game, and Dynasty is, like, PPR focused. You gotta like him, right? I'll still think he's, like, a really, really good talent. Don't want to give it away. Team 3. Took Drake London in the first round, although now I would have taken Treylon Burks. But still bad at running back. Still horrible at wide receiver. Pretty bad at tight end and quarterback as well, though those are not as big of needs. We're going to go with running back here just because if you're terrible at wide receiver and terrible at running back, maybe you just grab one of each. So we can go with James Cook, another running back that is much, much better in PPR scoring. 94th percentile 40 time, excellent in the receiving game. Again, another back that is going to be a team's third down back. I question whether he has the upside to like command early down work. With White, I think that's much more possible and honestly likely that he gets early down work. With Cook, I don't know. And if you guys don't know, this is Dalvin Cook's brother. I just don't know. I don't know if he is going to get an early down workload at all. Maybe he kind of mixes in for like, I mean, I don't know. I'm just guessing. I don't know what team's going to draft him, but maybe he mixes in for like 5 to 7 carries and then adds on the targets. But there's just a risk that he only has like 4 to 5 carries, and that's like not really as viable in fantasy. But again, super shifty, fantastic in the open field. If he catches a screen pass and he has some good blocks, he is taking it to the house, right? He's very, very fast, very, very quick in the open field. And again, very good in the receiving game. So he's going to be a third down back, and we love that in fantasy. And you know what? Like, what if he bulks up? What if he, maybe not this season, comes into next season, he's, 210 pounds, and maybe a team is more willing to give him some workload on the ground? Well, he has featured upside, right? And so that's kind of why I lean towards these running backs, is like, if you're already fantastic in the receiving game, you know that area is there. Well, what if they just start giving you some carries, right? With running backs that can't catch, it's like, well, what if they start getting targets? Okay, but they have to like learn a new skill instead of just like a team's just going to give them workload on the ground. So I hope that distinction kind of makes sense. It's easier to see that transition with a running back where it's like, oh, all you have to do is add a few pounds and the team just give you carries because you're already so good in the receiving game. For a player to all of a sudden become great in the receiving game, it's just unlikely. It's just unlikely to happen when a guy has just never gotten targets to all of a sudden be featured in that area, right? There's probably a reason they weren't getting a ton of targets. Next up, Team 4. Great at quarterback, great at tight end, great at running back, probably the worst team in the league at wide receiver. We took Garrett Wilson in round 2, or in round 1. In round 2, we're going to go back to wide receiver again. We're going to take David Bell. Really good route runner. Oh, I want to make sure you guys can see everything here. All right. Really good route runner. 94 percentile breakout age. Love to see that. Very productive in college. He was like the entire offense. They made sure to get him the ball in any way they could. Don't necessarily think that happens in the NFL. Like, I don't think he's a guy that's like, oh, just get him the ball in every play. I don't think he's going to be like the focal point of like an NFL offense. But I think he's a really, really quality wide receiver. He can be an X receiver, 6'1", 212 pounds, excellent route runner. The problem was his combine. It was really, really bad. 15th percentile 40 time. That's just not good, right? If you have the 15th percentile 40 time, you're just not getting open deep, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. It just takes away part of your scoring, right? If you just don't have the ability to catch, a 60-yard touchdown, take a screen to the house consistently, it just caps your ups. I just take something that certain players have that weekly ceiling because they can only have 4 targets in a down week, but one of them goes for a really long play. If you take that away, the down weeks are really, really down weeks. So just something to consider. Did awful in the 3-cone drill, the broad jump, the vertical, like just really, really bad at everything there. Really just check if he falls in the draft, right? Like if he tanks in the draft, teams are passing up on him. It means that they are concerned more about that combine, or maybe he's just not as good as we think he was. I use that as just a metric at all times, right? Whenever you can look at a player and be like, oh, he went a lot earlier than we were expecting, maybe we missed something. Because these teams, let's be honest, like we trash these teams a lot, but like they have a lot more resources than we do. They know what they're looking at. And when a person falls and just no one wants him, there's usually something there that they're seeing that we're not. And if teams aren't willing to put draft capital towards them, they're probably not willing to feature them unless they break out. So just in general, if he falls, that'll be a negative in my eyes more than some other players. Team 5. Quarterbacks, terrible. Tight ends, terrible. Actually decent at running back and wide receiver. In round 1, we took Kenny Pickett. So we're good at quarterback. Now, we're not good. I don't want to say like, it's only Malik Willis where you're just like, I think I'm good at quarterback because of the fantasy scoring there. I don't think any of these other quarterbacks, you can just be like, oh, my quarterbacks are terrible. But now I have, Kenny Pickett. Now it's solved, right? Like maybe in year 2, in year 3, but like right away, you realize that none of these guys are really going to step in and like solve your quarterback situation. But we addressed it in the draft. We've taken our quarterback. And so now I think we become the first team to take a tight end. Trey McBride. The weird stat line, I don't really know 100% how to justify it. 90 receptions, over 1,100 yards, fantastic. A tight end getting over 1,100 yards is phenomenal production in college. 1 touchdown. And you're like, okay, that's weird. Was that like regression? Like, is that going to bounce back? Only 10 touchdowns in 4 years of college is like, it's just odd. That's just like a really low number for a tight end that had 90 receptions for over 1,100 yards. Like that's like weird. Looked up some like scouting reports. Film scouts say he lacks physicality in his route running. Is that what's translating into the lack of touchdowns? Like I don't know personally. I don't really have a reason for it. So maybe something will come out about it. Maybe it doesn't matter at all. Maybe he just ends up going to really high scoring offense and we're like, oh, he's going to score touchdowns, right? It's just something to consider. I also just want to throw out there are no Kyle Pitts in this draft, and Kyle Pitts was like the only rookie tight end to ever do anything. You just need to understand that even if you're terrible at tight end and all of a sudden you draft one of these tight ends this season, it does not mean that tight end is solved for you. You cannot rely on any of these guys in year one, and you cannot guarantee that any of them are going to be high-end fantasy prospects. Tight end is very difficult to hit on, and so in general, I don't really want to draft them in a dynasty league. Again, this team has awful starters and the worst depth, so it would just make sense. And since they're so good at running back and wide receivers, it just makes sense to attack quarterback and tight end for them. But in general, I would rather just like give up some assets and trade for someone that we know is solid. We know will be solid for the next like 5 to 7 years instead of trying to hit in the draft. There are a lot of really good prospects in running back and wide receiver. I don't think you necessarily need to be drafting tight ends. So that's just kind of my spiel on tight ends. Team 6. Really bad at quarterback. Pretty bad at tight end again. Bad at running back, but decent at wide receiver. We took Kenneth Walker in round 1. So in round 2, we're going to go with, I believe, the final quarterback in this draft. There are basically 5 quarterbacks that, at least right now, maybe something will come out, maybe someone will be drafted earlier. There are basically 5 quarterbacks that you can draft in fantasy. Desmond Ridder, I mean, really fast, 97th percentile 40 time. Doesn't scramble too much. And by when I say too much, I don't mean like, oh, he never scrambles. I mean like he doesn't just drop back and run because he's fast. It's not just like drop back, oh, no one's open in like half a second, I'm running. Right? He can still sit back in the pocket, make a read. Improved his yards per pass attempt in every single season. I love to see that. I love to see someone come out of high school, have their first season, improve. It just keep getting better every single year. That's what he did. That's what could continue happening into the NFL. Maybe he comes in, he's a backup to start, but he's improving. He's getting better, and he's adding 97th percentile 40 time. Well, he's going to score some touchdowns on the ground. He's going to get us rushing production. We know rushing production is king. Well, no, remind me of that tomorrow. We know all these things, so yeah. It's basically he's a mobile quarterback. He's the 5th best quarterback. If you were at this point, or at least 5th best right now, again, we're going to see who they're drafted. If you're at the point where you like need a quarterback, 4 off the board, you probably just got to take the last one because it's a cliff. I mean, you're just not even considering anyone. Again, at this point, we'll see where they get drafted. But yeah, landing spot is going to be very key there. Oh, I spoiled it. Well, for those of you listening on the podcast, which you can do, iTunes and Spotify, I don't know, just type in like fantasy football advice. I'm sure you'll find it. Quarterback, really, really good for Team 7. Tight end, really, really good. Pretty mediocre at running back and wide receiver. We took a wide receiver, Treylon Burks, in round 1. And so we're going to go back to running back, and we're going to take Isaiah Spiller here. This is probably going to be the most controversial pick in fantasy this season, though a lot of it might be solved in the draft. If he tanks in the draft, he will fall in my rankings. But that 40 time, man, 4.64 pro day 40 time. Awful. Now, he didn't run in the combine because of a hamstring injury. Was that part of the reason that the 40 time in the pro day was awful? Maybe, right? I don't know how many of you have suffered hamstring injuries. I have suffered plenty of them. They don't just go away right away, and you just like don't trust going 100% when you are recovering from one. Now, not a lot of time between the pro day and the 40 time. Wow, that made no sense. Between the combine and the pro day, not a lot of time there. So was he fully recovered? It's just questions that I have. I don't want to put too much stock into just the 40 time. And when that's all you see from like every fantasy analyst is, oh, the 40 time is terrible. He's slow. You got to tank him. And everyone starts doing that. And then you go into drafts. And so the ADP is lower because of the 40 time. And all people are hearing is, oh, he's terrible. He's, super slow. You can't trust him. ADPs just keep dropping based off the exact same thing that already dropped before. So I don't know, because again, like I said in the first video, we have just no data right now on dynasty drafts, like no good data on like where people are actually going. I'm sure we'll get that. I don't know, and sometime in like May, we'll probably get decent data. We just don't have enough right now, and I don't think we can get it before the draft. So I don't know where he's going, but I think that's going to happen. I think people are going to see, oh, well, I like Hall, Walker, I like White, I like James Cook, I know his brother, I like some of these other running backs. I can hype myself into like Brian Robinson, Zamir White. We're going to talk about those guys soon. Like, I can hype myself into these guys. He's going to keep dropping and dropping and dropping. But he was a really good prospect, right? And he has 3-down upside. He's exceptional in the receiving game. He can easily be used on early downs. He's 6 foot 217. Also, he turns 21 in August. He's a very, very, very young prospect. Got a lot of things going for him, just not the 40 time, right? And I've seen some scouts that really, really, really like his film. Yeah, and I'm not a film scout. I'm not ever going to claim to be, but I read everyone. I don't know. I think there's a wide range of outcomes. I think people might overreact to the 40 time, but we'll see. If NFL teams don't care, then I probably don't care as well. Team 8, terrible quarterbacks, but all the quarterbacks are gone. Terrible tight ends. Really, really good running back core, on wide receiver. We took quarterback in round 1, and there's none left, so we're not going to go there. We're going to go with Christian Watson. Very, 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 very athletic wide receiver, but I got some notes on him. I think he's got a very wide range of outcomes here. I think he needs to go to a really good team. He has a lot of upside if he does go to a really good team. Again, one of the most athletic wide receivers we're going to see here. 98th percentile speed score, 95th percentile burst score, 99th percentile broad jump. He's an athletic freak. Very, very athletic. Fantastic deep threat. Really good at adjusting to deep passes. Really good at getting open deep. Can just run by anyone. He's a very, very, very good deep threat. Very good upside if he lands on a team with a good quarterback. But he's from North Dakota State, right? He tore apart the Northern Iowa Panthers and the Youngstown State Penguins. Okay, and he was shut down by the Albany Great Danes. Think about that for a second. And he's already turning 23. So he is a year older than Elijah Moore. He's the same age as Gabriel Davis. This is just what I always come back to when I think about especially smaller school prospects that are older, and like the production was good, but it wasn't like he posted like the greatest numbers of all time, right? He's just a very athletic, older wide receiver. What if we took Gabriel Davis, and we put him on North Dakota State, and we had him go up against the Albany Great Danes? I think he'd post pretty good numbers, right? What if in a year from now, we took Elijah Moore and we put him against these teams? Probably pretty good, right? So I always want to take that into consideration. I think, again, he's got a lot of upside. Just look at the pure athleticism he has. Fantastic. Understand that he's got a very, very low floor because we haven't seen him go up against really, really quality defenses. Team 9. Good at pretty much anything. I would say wide receiver is their weakest point, but we addressed that with Jameson Williams in round 1. In round 2, we're going to go back to wide receiver, Jahan Dotson. Dotson for me is tougher to figure out. 85th percentile, 40 time, good. But he's a smaller receiver, 5'11", 178. So even though he's really fast, the speed score is below average, 36th percentile. Really good route runner. Going to get open on double moves for sure. Easily can create separation. Those are the receivers I really like. Guys who can create separation on their own. Use on special teams. That just signals to me, hey, they know he's athletic. They want to get him the ball into his hands, so they use him on special teams. Great. He's an athletic wide receiver. Not an X receiver, but you don't need to be an X receiver, right? We just use that term to be like, okay, well, when someone is, playing in the X role on an offense, we just know that comes with a lot of upside. it caps it a little bit when you're not in that role. You're not getting as many targets. But if he's on a good offense and he's getting loose deep, I don't really care what, number wide receiver, what letter wide receiver is in the offense. If you're getting looks downfield, that's really, really good. If you're on a good offense, you're going to score touchdowns in general. I don't care what role you're playing on the team. I think landing spot, if it's good, I'll move him up. If he goes early, move him up. I just haven't, I don't know, for like me, I haven't confirmed if I think he's going to be fantastic, I guess, if that makes sense. And I think I'm going to let landing spot determine that for me. I don't have a fantastic feel for if he's going to be, starting in year one and commanding, a 17% target share. Like, I don't know. I really don't know. And so when we see what offense he goes on, that's going to help us. Does he land in Chicago? Does he land in Carolina? Like, which is like, there's so many different ways he could go. He could go to the Packers. Like, there's just the range of outcomes there is crazy. Let's just see where he goes for confirming that. But that's where I kind of have him right now. Team 10, fantastic quarterbacks, average running back, average wide receiver, not so great tight ends. We took Sky Moore in round 1. We're gonna go with Brian Robinson here. This is kind of a luxury pick, and I'll say this. Like I said, these teams were like the top scoring teams. They were the number 1 teams last season. You can kind of make luxury picks, and you don't really want to force yourself into anything. Even if you're just like average at a position, if you think the top guy, is Brian Robinson, you take him. And I just thought at this point, Brian Robinson was a really good pick, especially since we already addressed wide receiver. Just felt like the right move. Didn't want to reach on a tight end. Again, you can make trades for tight ends, and I don't think you need to worry too much about that in drafts. But Brian Robinson, bigger back, still quality in the receiving game. He's not, James Cook, right? He's not Rashad White, but he's fine. He's good enough in the receiving game to get by. 85th percentile speed score because of the bigger size. 305 touches at Alabama. I always just kind of use that as like okay. Well, if Alabama is willing to give you 305 touches, you have to have some baseline level of skill, right? You're not terrible, right? There's a low percent chance that you're terrible if Alabama gave you 305 touches. So I think he's going to be a quality running back. Only producing as a senior at age 22 is a slight concern. I like to see multiple years of production. I like to see producing at a younger age. You're an older prospect behind Alabama's offensive line. Is that like a little bit unfair? Do we really know how good you are? And just those same issues with Rashad White. The age. Same age as Jonathan Taylor, half a year older than Cam Akers, 2.5 years older than Isaiah Spiller, Breece Hall. Hey, why don't I just take a chance on Isaiah Spiller in 2 years? Like, I'm just going to have him for a longer time. In 2 years, could he be as good or better than Brian Robinson? For sure. He might already be better right now. So, age. Age is, I guess, the number one concern there. Team 11. Terrible quarterbacks, but quarterbacks are gone. Decent tight ends, decent wide receivers, on running backs. We took Sam Howell in round 1, so obviously we're not doing another reach there. We're going to go with one of my favorite picks, and I don't know where he's going to end up in my rankings because, again, we don't know where these guys are going. I'm going to be freaking out if Zamir White goes to a team that needs help at running back and we think he can have like a featured role. 95th percentile speed score, was the number 1 running back recruit coming out of high school, but he tears his ACL. I believe it's in the write-up. I have a huge write-up for him on the Dynasty rankings. It's in the write-up. You can read that. I believe it was, off the top of my head, it was like his very end of high school. I don't know if it was in the last game or whatever, but he tears at the very end of his high school career. Tears it again right when he's coming back from that. So it like kind of happened back to back. So he never really broke out younger. I mean, if he doesn't have those injuries, he could be the number 1 pick in Dynasty drafts right now, like for sure, right? Because he could have just crushed it for multiple years. Didn't really happen. He said he didn't really feel 100% until last season. He said he felt maybe 100% like athletically, but like physically in his mind. And when you come off 2 torn ACLs, you have to understand that's going to happen, right? Like you're just not going to trust it right away because you've just been injured for years. Didn't feel 100% until last season when he was like the leading rusher for Georgia in their national championship run. The lack of a passing game role is concerning because, of course, we always love that. But I don't think this signals that he can't catch. I think it signals that, well, he was playing with James Cook, right? James Cook, that's like him, right? If you're not using James Cook in the receiving game, how are you using James Cook, right? Like that's his best attribute. If they didn't have him, and also Georgia just like does that, they just like have running backs split the time. If they didn't have James Cook, then they very well may have been giving Zamir White a ton of targets. And so I don't think that signals, and maybe they just didn't want to give him a ton of touches because he's coming off with 2 torn ACLs, right? So I think this is an upside play. And it's the perfect pick if your team is really good, even if you don't need running back, and you're just like, hey, I don't need these guys to produce right now. I don't need them to even work out. I have a really, really good team. Team 11 got second place last year. Take a shot. Take a shot on Zamir White. Again, I don't know where he's being drafted. I don't know where he's going to end up going. I have a feeling it's going to be in this range or maybe even later. But if he goes to a good landing spot, I'm just going to be ahead of ADP. If he ends up being an early second round pick, I'm moving him up. Like I want to be ahead of ADP on Zamir White. I truly believe in his talent. I believe he can be phenomenal in the NFL. I want him. Final pick. Team 12 won the championship last year. Great quarterbacks, great running backs, great tight ends. I guess they're a little bit underperforming at the wide receiver position. We took Chris Olave in round 1. We're going to go to John Mechie in round 2. Another player that I don't have a full read on. I think the range of outcomes is pretty wide, but I think the ceiling is high in those range of outcomes. 23% target share at Alabama, 87 yards per game. That is good. Coming off a torn ACL, although every report that I have personally seen indicates that his recovery has been positive. It's been a really good recovery, and so not really concerned about it. Also, under 25, like that's just a general rule of thumb. If you're under 25 years old, you suffer the torn ACL, I'm not worried. There's a great track record of people recovering under 25. Over 25, it's less of a good track record, but under 25, which is what he is, obviously, he's a rookie. So I'm not overly concerned about that. You're always concerned about the late breakout age, 32nd percentile, but I'd be more concerned if he was from a small school. He's from Alabama, right? He had elite target competition. He's competing with Devonta Smith, Waddle, Ruggs. Like, they have really good receivers. So he would have had an earlier breakout age if he'd gone to a different school. And then also early declare. So if you're a late breakout and you're not an early declare, that's a concern, right? You were producing right up until the end, or you took right up until the end to produce. He came out early, right? If he had stayed at Alabama next season, he might have produced really, really good numbers. And then what? He would have moved up in Dynasty drafts, even though you have one less year with him on your team, right? Like to see. Early declare. I think that mitigates, for me, the lower target share, especially being on really good offense. Smaller frame, 5'11", 187. I wouldn't say that's undersized. We're going to start getting to. I think the first 2 rounds are like really, really good prospects. As we work into round 3, as we work into round 4, the quality of prospect comes crashing down, and we're going to get some guys who are undersized, who are truly undersized, right? So I don't think 5'11", 187 is like something to be concerned about. It's just a smaller frame. Figured I'd mention it. But he's got the speed, good quickness, can burn corners. I'm just hoping, honestly, people are scared of the torn ACL, never gets expensive, and he's a guy you can take, end of the second round, really good upside, because, it could really, really work out for you, and then, well, if you're picking at the end of the second round, you have a really good team to begin with, that's a lot of upside. So, let me know also one thing. Whenever we do these Dynasty videos, these are newer names to all of us, right? Because I'm not, checking these guys in like the Devy leagues and everything. I'm not drafting them out of high school, right, in these leagues. Let me know if I'm pronouncing anyone's names wrong. I don't think so. It's definitely Desmond Ridder. The other one was Jahan Dotson. I'm fairly confident that's how you pronounce them. And I'm pretty sure no one else has weird spelling in this one, but maybe in round 3 and round 4, if I pronounce someone's name wrong, let me know. I will try and correct it. And remember, you can get a full write-up on all these players on our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. You just go to the rankings. If you're on mobile or you slap the page in half, there's a little plus. You can see when it's updated and then you can click note. If you're on a computer, there's just going to be a note column. Click that, it's going to pop up. It'll be the same thing for redraft rankings as well. During the season, though, like I keep saying, redraft rankings will not be up until after the draft. So, and FFA. Use promo code FFA. You're going to get 20% off any package. That ends end of April. So you're paying full price. There's not going to be a discount during the summer, right before the season starts. This is the discount right now. Promo code FFA. Any package you want. If you only want Dynasty, you want All In. Obviously, I think All In's the best because it's cheaper than when you combine 2 packages. And you just might want draft. You might want sports betting. You might want in season. So, anyways, that'll do it for this one. Hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting that like button? How about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.